11 years after the fall of the Taliban, Herat, a former stop on the Silk Road, is once again the beating heart of Afghan commerce. The constant thump of three-wheeled motorcycles and taxis forms the soundtrack of a city buzzing with activity. These peculiar motorcycles are called Zaranj, named after the first company to manufacture them in Afghanistan. Today, the brand has become a symbol of hope in the economic renewal of the country, and it is also a source of opportunity for young Afghans like 23-year-old Abdul Karim. Unemployed like 35% of the country, he wants to start working as a delivery driver.
I'd like to buy a Zaranj.
The job could earn him up to €150 a month, 5 times the average Afghan salary.
All right, then it's this one. How much does it cost?
€800.
Zaranj motorcycles are cheap to run and built to cope with the rough roads of the Afghan countryside.
There's lots of reasons why I chose to buy a Zaranj. It's sturdy and can carry really heavy loads. I've got friends who've bought it and it really works on most terrains. Also, since it doesn't need much maintenance, pretty much all that we earn is a direct profit.
All kinds of people come here to buy these motorcycles. I've had young customers who want to buy them just for a laugh, or guys who want to run taxis, or farmers who need them to transport their tools and produce.
This dealership alone sells 2,000 locally assembled Zaranjas to customers like Abdul Karim every year. The war has left Herat relatively untouched, and the city is home to many of Afghanistan's industries. Naeem Qadri is the man who introduced three-wheeled motorcycles to Afghanistan. He launched his first assembly line just after the fall of the Taliban in 2001. Even though most of the parts come from China, the chassis is made on site.
Look, this whole piece is an original creation. We designed it. This is the frame, and here is a leg guard, and this is where we fix the engine. I first had the idea to create a light three-wheeled motorcycle that could be used by disabled landmine victims. At first it was designed to make it easier for them to move around, but soon we realised that other people, those that couldn't afford a car or a truck, were also interested.
A simple concept that's become immensely successful, and not just in Afghanistan. Today, Zaranj is one of the few Afghan manufacturers that exports its products.
We're present across Central Asia and also in Sudan, Tajikistan and Pakistan. We're even trying to enter India. We're trying our best to stay competitive, and for the moment, we've been able to keep our prices in line with those of Chinese rivals.
Naeem Qadri's story of success is still very much the exception in Afghanistan, which remains one of the world's poorest countries. However, 11 years of coalition presence and the associated military spending has helped Afghanistan develop enormously. Banned under the Taliban regime, cell phone and television antennas now crown the hills surrounding Kabul. The capital is home to more than 30 TV channels and newly launched 3G data services. So it's no surprise that two of the country's largest employers are telecom giants Mobi and Roshan. The two companies have teamed up to launch Afghanistan's very first professional football league. A senior American diplomat has come to watch the final. His presence here would have been unimaginable a decade ago. Under the Taliban, public stadiums like this were used to hang murderers. Today, multi-ethnic regional teams will go head-to-head in a spectacle that promises to be a lot less violent.
And I think it's very important that the Afghan Premier League exists. Even as Afghanistan lives in difficult times, there are signs that some things are in fact changing for the better. It's a symbol of the new Afghanistan.
A change made largely possible by American dollars. The US has made it a key strategy to sponsor mass media and communication technologies. The goal, in military terms, to win minds and hearts. On the field, the goal is to score. And the only team to do so are the Eagles of Herat, who comprehensively beat the Hawks of Mazar-e-Sharif. The stands erupt in joyous celebration, and the enthusiastic supporters seem to share the ambassador's optimism.
Thank God. It's much better than under the Taliban, and we can't go back to that time.
It's been getting better and better every year. To see this many people together celebrating, it was unimaginable before.
But many fear that these sort of scenes could become history after the withdrawal of the 100,000 foreign troops still in Afghanistan. Their departure will also threaten tens of thousands of jobs. Despite that, Ambassador McFarlane believes the country has the resources to develop on its own.
The economy faces a number of challenges. The economy is much, much better than it was 10 or 11 years ago. And there is quite a bit of potential in terms of natural resources that, if Afghanistan decides on the ways to exploit them, can be very beneficial for the country.
But Afghanistan is still a long way away from taking those decisions, and foreign troops are already leaving. As the NATO-led operation winds down, security contractors have also begun to leave. It is a major blow to a country whose economy is artificially bolstered by foreign spending. According to the World Bank, an incredible 97% of the country's GDP depends on military spending and international aid. The military withdrawal is already claiming its first victims. Farhad Safi's family has been making shoes for 5 generations.
This is the boot production place. Before we had like 700 workers working here.
3 years ago, Farhad won a huge contract from NATO to supply boots to the Afghan security forces. His family has invested 15 million euros in equipment.
These are the machines which the needle is thicker. All equipment is different from other receiving machines. This works with the leather, every type of leather.
However, the Afghan Ministry of Defense scrapped Farhad's contract in favor of cheaper Chinese boots.
These are all the boots. We already produced it. It's finished, it's ready for delivery. It is probably 100,000 pairs are here. These are the finished boots.
Not so long ago, Farhad's company was presented as a model of economic development by NATO forces. In this video produced by NATO TV, Farhad Safi is praised for his entrepreneurial spirit.
We went out and looked at things that we could produce locally, and boots was probably one of the first ones.
2 years later, Farhad feels abandoned. Neither the US Army nor the Afghan government have responded to his calls for help.
And we don't have any orders, so we just put them here. Once we get orders, we can finish them. It's very hard to do an investment in Afghanistan. It's hard to make a factory like this and then train all the unskilled people to a skilled. We spent all nights, days without sleep to make this factory, and once it has built, nobody cares, you know.
Now severely in debt, Farhad is thinking of leaving the country. It doesn't help that his family is also regularly threatened by the Taliban.
Yes, we are afraid if Taliban come. They don't want that anyone helps or supports the US government.
Fears about the return of the Taliban, the risk of civil war, rampant government corruption. These are just some of the factors scaring away foreign and Afghan investors. The seemingly endless row of cranes and construction equipment on Kabul's outskirts has lain idle since funding dried up for new construction projects. Despite a serious lack of investor confidence, the government's trying to put on a good face. The Afghan Investment Support Agency has organized an annual trade fair. Although it's supposed to project the strength of the Afghan economy, it looks more like a large handicraft shop, a problem that the organizers recognize.
We put the carpets at the entrance because that's our main expertise, and internationally it's our best known product.
Ibrahim Shams is responsible for funding many of Afghanistan's development projects, and he is fully aware of the fragility of an economy where agriculture accounts for over 80% of jobs. Opium, which brings in more than $1 billion, is still the most valuable product for most Afghans, with viable alternatives scarce.
We're trying to develop subsidized canned vegetables.
Mr. Shams concedes that without international aid, Afghan manufacturers are not ready to compete, even in Asia.
I admit that it's currently impossible for local entrepreneurs to get by without subsidies. Fortunately, so far, the most important international organisations, such as USAID, the World Bank and the IMF, have been supporting us. They've helped Afghanistan enormously, and I hope they continue to fund our private sector.
But donors are increasingly unwilling to commit funds. A major reason is the lack of confidence in the government of President Hamid Karzai, which is accused of embezzling massive amounts of international aid. Still, the president does his best to convince the foreign delegates from the Middle East and China that Afghanistan is an investment destination. The president downplays concerns about the departure of foreign troops and promises better governance after the 2014 elections.
The retreat has become an obsession in our minds, but it is based only on the negative propaganda of the international media who use it to sell their papers. There will be elections in 2014, there will be a new government and a new president, and I assure you that it will be much better than the current one, and that the new president too will be stronger.
Fine words, but perhaps not enough to convince the doubters. Afghanistan was recently ranked the most corrupt country in the world by Transparency International. On top of that, the World Bank has ominously warned that if it does not continue to receive a minimum of €3 billion of external aid per year, Afghanistan's government won't be too far away from total collapse.